Bienvenidos a Raíces.
Welcome to Raíces, a storytelling podcast celebrating the journeys, resilience, and healing of our communities.
We're three friends and co-founders, storytellers, creatives, and community builders, coming together to honor where we came from and the roots that shaped us.
Each episode, we share real conversations with changemakers, healers, and everyday people who are breaking cycles, reclaiming identity, and creating impact in their own way. This is Raíces. All right, welcome to the fourth episode of Raíces podcast. We are so honored to be hosting Xinia Bermúdez. Xinia comes from New York City, is currently living in Miami, and comes from Costa Rican descent. Xinia has committed her life to advocating social justice, advocating for vulnerable populations in various capacities. She's currently an immigration attorney with a focus on representing clients who are victims of human trafficking and domestic violence. Outside of work, Xinia loves running and is eyeing the London Marathon next. So exciting. And she loves exploring new restaurants everywhere she goes. So welcome, Xinia. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you both for having me. I really appreciate it and I'm really excited about this.
Yay!
Excited to have you.
Yeah, so happy to dive in with you.
Yeah. Okay. You flashed up your mug.
My Starbucks
Yeah.
Costa Rica mug.
Oh, that's so
Oh my
cute. My
God.
mom collects those.
I do too. And my sister
Yeah.
just went to Costa Rica and she was like, "Do you want anything?" And I was like, "Girl, no, I'm fine." And then she's like, "What about this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did not know that it existed." Yes,
I didn't know I needed that, but now I need it.
exactly. So
Cute.
Very cute. Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to get this conversation started. I want to go back to the beginning. So, Xenia, if you can bring us back to your earliest memories that you can think of, and this can be related to memories about your cultural connection, your family, maybe the community. But what were some of those formative memories that you can look back on that you recognize now really influenced who Xenia is today?
So my earliest memory, and it plays into our culture a little bit. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I just remember being like 3 years old, dancing on my like right outside my front stoop to La Bamba. I was obsessed with that song, just being a little kid dancing at the stoop. But I think what makes me, like who I am today, going into that culture, my family, I come from a family of immigrants. I like always joke that I was the only gringa in my family for a really long time. And it wasn't raised that much in my house. I was acutely cognizant of the fact that my parents came here. Dad ended up overstaying his visa. My mom crossed the border with my two older sisters. They were here undocumented for several years, but it wasn't necessarily a topic of my household until one day we were watching Univision and they were talking about some stash house in Arizona that got raided. And my mom just like turned super pale. And I was like, "What's happening?" And she was like, "I was at that stash house. Like when I crossed the border with your sisters, like we were held at that stash house." And I was like, "What's happening?" And I like it just kind of that was kind of the opening of the window to like knowing my family's immigration story, just because my family was so hesitant to talk about it. It was a taboo topic, and especially growing up in the 90s, immigration has always been a hot topic in politics. And I think particularly after immigration was essentially criminalized with the Illegal Immigration Reform Act in 96. Sorry, getting a little legal. But I think especially after that, like it was just something we didn't talk about in the house until my mom just kind of let me take a glimpse into it. And it was almost eye-opening because like I had no idea. And I think it made me realize how lucky I am that it wasn't a part of my daily life. Like it wasn't something that affected me in my house. I had friends that were Latino, and like I always asked, like, "Why don't you go back to your country?" Because we were fortunate. We were able to, once my family did get their papers, we were able to go back and forth to Costa Rica often. So, I grew up with the luxury of knowing my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, because the entire family was back in Costa Rica, and asking my other Latino friends, like, why don't you go back to Ecuador? And they're like, we can't. And I'm like, oh, why?
Yeah.
You don't think about those things as a little kid. You don't think about like the documentation that's needed. You just get a passport and you go. So I think it made me realize how privileged I am, how lucky my family was that we were eventually able to get out of the shadows and not necessarily have it affect our daily lives.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing more about that. I'm kind of curious, how old were you when that moment happened with your mom?
I would say I was probably older. Like I was probably a teenager, like either like
Oh.
a tween or early teens when it happened. Just I remember it was in my because after Brooklyn we moved to Staten Island. I'm a New York girl through and through, and so I remember it was in my kitchen in Staten Island when we were watching it, and so it had to have been like 12, maybe 13. So really a long time without really realizing or thinking about immigration and how fortunate we were, honestly.
I just wanted to ask, how did you become an immigration lawyer and why did you pursue that career? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So I've always had social justice advocacy mindset. I think my turning point was I started out in undergrad as a psych major. I took Psych 101 and I absolutely hated it. But I took this class in undergrad it was about Latin America and just talking about the culture and the whatnot. And as much pride as I have in growing up in Brooklyn and everything in New York in general, I was a little bit of a coconut, to be honest. White girl inside. My high school was an all girls high school on Staten Island. Most of my classmates were Italian American. So that undergrad class was kind of my first intro to how beautiful our culture, our community is. That class literally, I think, changed my life because I ended up majoring in Latin American studies and double majored in politics. I was like, I'm going to go help these governments. And so I started out in government and then I went into nonprofit. I lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And for a long time, I didn't know what path I wanted to take. I knew I needed to get a higher degree. I didn't know if it was going to be my master's, if it was going to be my JD. And around that time, it was the recession back in 2008 when I graduated from undergrad. And everybody I knew was like, don't go to law school. It's a huge investment. You're going to be in debt, blah, blah, blah. And so I unfortunately listened to them. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then eventually, a few years later, I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing at that time for the rest of my life. I knew I wanted something more. And this is kind of where my new community came in. My fiance was like, if you want to go to law school, just do it. Just buy the LSAT book and start studying. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go to law school. Like, that's a lot right now. And I had one friend who was like, you want to go to law school? And he was a lawyer. So to preface that, he was like, if you want to if you want to become a lawyer, you should absolutely go to law school. He's like, I haven't regretted it a day of my life. And that was the only push I needed. And literally the next day, I bought my LSAT books and started studying for the entrance exam. So it was really about your community, who you surround yourself with, because I just needed that push. For me, that was all I needed. And the reason I decided law school as opposed to getting my master's is because I knew I would be able to affect a greater change as an attorney. I knew the type of work that I wanted to do would be more effective with a JD at the end of my name. So I knew I eventually wanted to end up in immigration. I was still with the mindset that, no, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to fix the problems of our home countries. I started out in international human rights, actually. That was my first career when I graduated law school / while I was still in law school. Realized it wasn't for me. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I'm an Aries. I'm very impatient. And the first case that I was handed was like a case from 1995. And I was like, and this was 2018 by this point. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I don't have the patience for this. I need to be able to see the change that I make. So after I had a fellowship, and after my fellowship was over, I pivoted to immigration much sooner than I thought I would. So
Yeah.
I recognize how fortunate my family was, and not everybody is given that same opportunity. So I wanted to give back. I wanted to make sure that everybody has the same opportunities my family did.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting hearing you describe this part of you that, okay, it's funny that you said Aries, but it's this like fiery energy of like, I want to make everything better and change the world and like improve all of this. And I can even see it as you're talking about it. Is that something that was always in you, even as a kid, or did that start after you started to learn about your family's journey?
I think it was always in me as a kid. I always wanted to help others. I always wanted a career where I can help others. It just took a while to figure out what that career looked like. Because, like I said, like I started undergrad thinking I wanted to become a criminal profile to help lock up the bad people. And as a kid, everybody would tell me, you like to argue, like you'd be a great lawyer. Like they tell every kid that likes to argue.
Yeah.
And like for me, like the only lawyers I knew were like the ones on TV that were like, or like the kind of like the schemy, slimy people that like you don't necessarily think to humanitarian work who do good work. And I think I realized that more and more as I got out of my shell, out of my bubble, really, and started at school, started exploring more of what the world is really like, how the world really functions. I was in a sorority in undergrad as well, and that opened up my eyes to a lot of people's plights and different stories. And I, I knew when I was in undergrad that I wanted my career, whatever it looked like, to focus on humanity. I think just always having that, I want to say like, I don't want to say passion, but having that voice and asserting myself and asserting what I believe in has always been a part of me.
Yeah. I was curious too, because I think like sometimes as we get older, we start to realize, oh, these characteristics of me are like I'm becoming my parents, or these are characteristics of my parents too. So I was kind of wondering, is it also you need to look back like something you were seeing in your family like as well?
It's interesting that you say that because I've never thought of that. But now that I'm like thinking about it, it makes sense because that was around the time my parents were getting divorced. And so like my mom is not outspoken. Like she's she's off, and neither is my dad. I honestly never really fully understood like where I fit in the mold. But I think as my parents are going through the divorce, and like one's talking in one ear, one's talking in the other ear, and I'm like, this is between y'all. Like, please don't put me in the middle. I had to advocate for myself in that sense. That like,
Mm,
making sure like my boundaries were set because I'm like, whatever happened between y'all. Don't put me in the middle.
yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, no, I
Yeah.
Yeah.
legit never thought of that.
You're talking about your parents. Can you tell us more about Xenia and your name? And like, were you named after somebody or do you know what it means?
Yeah, so it was named after my dad's mom. Her name was also Xinia, and it is actually Greek for hospitality, hospitable. So I'm like,
Mm.
it makes sense. It fits. Don't have a more exciting story behind that, but yeah, it was. I was going to be named after one of my grandparents, depending on what gender I came out. So it was my turned out to be my dad's mom.
Oh, got it.
Connection to your roots, so it's beautiful.
And it's actually a pretty common name in Costa Rica. It astounds
Oh.
me. Yeah, nobody here in the States has heard of it. And then you go to Costa Rica and there's like seniors on every corner. And I'm like, well, although I went shopping one day and it was Bath and Body Works. I was picking up my online order from Candle Day. And this girl was like, Senior? And I was like, yeah. I was like, wow, you got the pronunciation right. She's like, are you Costa Rican? And I was like, I am. She's like, I have a coworker. Her name is Xinia, and she's from Costa Rica too. And I was like, where is she? I want to meet her. But
Who in Costa Rica started this trend? It was like one person picked the name and then everyone's like, I like that. We're gonna go with
yes,
it.
I guess I never fully understood it, but it's nice kind of having like best of both worlds. Like here I'm not anonymous, but nobody has my name, and then I go to Costa Rica and it's common. So
Yeah, that's so funny.
so random.
Hey, Xinia, I was really curious about, can you talk to us about your story with your family? You mentioned earlier that you were watching the news and your mom was like, "Oh my gosh, we were in Arizona at that, what is it, a holding
Stash house holding. Yeah.
stash house." Can you share what exactly they went through and the story of them coming over here to America?
Yeah. Unfortunately, my mom and my sister stories, so many of immigrants who come to this country for a better life. As I mentioned, my family's from Costa Rica. Essentially, they flew from Costa Rica to Mexico near the border. And from the border, my grandma had found a coyote to guide my mom and my sisters across the border. My dad was already in the United States, and my sisters were 7 and 5 at the time. They were pretty little. Based on My mom doesn't like talking about it just because of everything that they went through. And I understand that's a lot of the work I do right now, and hearing what my clients go through. It's tough. You know, they crossed the desert for days trying to enforcement wasn't as bad then as it is now. Still trying to avoid getting captured by CBP and essentially walking along the border slash finding a point to be able to cross. There wasn't the fences or the trenches that you see on the news nowadays back then, but traveling with a 5 and a 7-year-old can't be easy by yourself. So my middle sister, who was the 5-year-old at the time, my mom would tell me that she was constantly crying, being a 5-year-old, being forced to walk hundreds of miles through desert terrain with with little provisions. There's only so much water and food you can carry with you. After arriving at that stash house in Arizona, they were taken to LA, and from LA they went to New York. They were one of the lucky ones in that they weren't captured by CBP. My mom told me that she remembers hiding in the ground while the helicopters hovered above, hiding in the dunes to make sure that they weren't seen. And they were very lucky because a lot of others aren't so lucky. And yeah, and once my mom arrived in New York, she started working as a housekeeper. Work and did that until the day she retired. Even after she got her papers, even after she got her green card, after she got her citizenship, she was still a housekeeper until she moved back to Costa Rica.
Do you ever think about, like, that's the reason that you're here? Is that kind of something that you're just like, "Oh wow, their decisions," and what does that make you feel?
I think that's what drove me at the end of the day to be an immigration attorney. Like, had my mom gone back to Costa Rica, had she decided, like, no, this is too much, I can't do it, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. I was born 2 years after she arrived in the US. So I definitely wouldn't be around. If I was around, my life would look incredibly different. It, it, like I said, it's a reminder of how lucky I am. Not everybody gets this opportunity. And it makes me feel blessed and makes me want to use the power that I have at the end of the day to advocate for others that aren't so lucky.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you. When you're describing these career changes too that you've made, those take a lot of effort in themselves, like switching paths. You had to start a new educational program. And then on top of that, to your point, there were those folks along the way that were saying, this takes a long time, it takes a lot of money. I'm I'm wondering for those who might be listening and interested in understanding this part of your journey as well, what did that look like getting through law school and then becoming an attorney? Because I imagine that took a lot of hours and effort.
Yeah. So I was a non-traditional law student, as you can imagine. I was out of school for 7 years by the time I enrolled in law school. Most of my classmates were either what we called K through JD, like just went straight from undergrad to law school. There was never any kind of judgment. Why did you wait so long to go to law school or anything like that? But a lot of people ask me, why did you decide to go to law school after being out in the workforce for some time? But there was never, I don't think, any kind of judgment. But it was interesting transitioning from going to work 9 to 5, being out of the work, because you're in a different mindset when you're at work versus when you're in school. And I'd forgotten about that. I'd forgotten how different work life balance is versus student life balance. That took the hardest adjustment. I can't just clock out of work and be done with my day. No, I have to go to class, and then after class I have to go to the library and have to do my assignments. And you know, I was an overachiever in law school. I was in a bunch of clubs and doing pro bono work and doing actual work after my 1L year, my first year of law school. I was doing a clinic as well, my second year of law school. I did the most in law school. That advice that I got all those years ago, over 10 years ago at this point, of if you want to go to law school, you should absolutely do it. Still stands true. That's the advice that I tell everybody. It doesn't matter how long you've been out of school, how long you've been in the workforce. Like, if this is something that you really want to do, you should absolutely do it. Just make sure that it's something that you really want to do, because it is expensive.
Yeah.
I'm still paying off my student loans. But I would not take it back for anything in the world. It has been worth every blood, sweat, and tear that I've shed.
Yeah. Your friend's advice ended up being very true then.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry if it felt like a quick pivot into that. I think that came to mind because the way that you described your change in direction and everything that you work so hard for reminds me of a lot of individuals who come from families of immigrants where you want to make the most of the opportunity that your family created for you. So you're like, I'm not going to take this for granted for anything. And I'm just going to live out all the dreams that wouldn't have been possible if they hadn't taken those steps.
absolutely. And I think a big part of me felt that way by not having to gotten a higher degree. It almost felt like I'm disappointing my mom. Like, I went to a great undergrad. I went to NYU for undergrad. So that in of itself was an achievement. I'm like, no, I can do more. I can become more. And my mom is my mom. She knows me. She knows I don't necessarily like to be pushed. She knows that if I if I want to do something, it's because I tell myself I want to do something, not because somebody else tells me to do it. So she would nudge me here and there. When are you gonna go back to school and do it? And I'm like, I don't know. But then I think being surrounded by the community that I surrounded myself in, with my partner, with my friends who helped me, kind of, they helped show me what it was that I wanted to do. It wasn't they told me what I wanted to do. They showed me, this these are, if you do this, this is what can happen, and that's what I needed.
Yeah. Thank goodness for those friends that lift us up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I'd love to shift over to your current work then. So you're right now a supervisor. Is that right? Okay,
Yes,
so you oversee a team of immigration attorneys.
correct. Yes.
Okay. What is it in your current work, like a project, or even maybe it's navigating through so much of what's happening in our country right now when it comes to policy and otherwise, but what is something that you're working on that you're extremely driven and passionate about that you might want to share?
It's a great question. I think it's hard to choose, just because I think the work of all immigration attorneys right now is really important. Because of all of the changes, everything that's happening, a lot of us are being burnt out really quickly. I've had friends leave the profession. I've seen a lot of people leave the profession. I think any small victory that we can get is something that should be celebrated. That is something worth it. Personally, when I say they, I mean immigration, USCIS, the US Citizenship and Immigration Services, tried to revoke my client's visa. They were a victim of trafficking. Their application had been approved. They found that they were a victim of trafficking. I They issued a request for evidence last year that I worked really hard on to make sure that the case got approved. It got approved. I was beyond excited because it was a child sex trafficking case. I was thrilled. And then earlier this year, we got a notice of intent to revoke that they made up some BS reason to try to revoke my client's visa. I again fought really hard and it was really frustrating just because I'm like, you found my client was a victim of sex trafficking as a child, as a minor. Like, you're really trying to do this. And last week, I found out that they reissued her visa. So I cried. I
Yeah.
I try so hard not to cry like at work, but every once in a while, like I have my moments because it's hard not to carry that burden with you. But one thing I learned early on in this profession is I can't let it. You're not going to survive otherwise. So I try my best to compartmentalize. I can't always leave work at the office, but I try not to bring it home. So seeing that approval notice come in the mail, like it probably made my entire month, year, if anything. So
Yeah.
Oh wow. You're like literally changing people's lives.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I love the most about my job. Like I literally, like every single case that I touch, like I'm helping this person. And, the visas that we work on particularly, they lead to, once they're approved, they lead to work permits. And then after 3 years in that status, they can get their green cards and then eventually their citizenship. So it's like I'm helping people achieve the American dream. And it's
Yeah.
amazing work.
Oh
I'm
wow.
so glad they have you.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, even just the whole reason why we're starting this platform to showcase people like you, like, what if you're you're already like literally changing people's lives in the work that you do, but even just showing you and like the things that you represent and like who you are and how you went to law school. And it just goes beyond that. So I really hope that it touches the younger generations and just even you just being a girl. That's so powerful and so cool too. And I think you're making a really big impact by decisions that you've made. So whether they're big or small, I hope that you know that you're changing lives in that way too.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
thank
yeah.
you.
In this club, we all cry.
Yeah. Like,
Nearby, I wasn't expecting that. It's an honor to have this voice because I know not everybody is fortunate enough to have it. Even, I don't know, even just being able to help my friends with their simple immigration questions, having just somebody in your circle is, especially during these times, invaluable. And it's hard work. I don't do it to get recognized. I do it because my heart is in it. I can leave tomorrow, but I don't want to at the end of the day because I know that my work matters.
Mhm.
I know that the case that I work on tomorrow is going to change somebody's life. And I would not take that back for anything in the world. Side story, I just helped my in laws with their naturalization interviews, and they're like, oh my God, they're eternally grateful. I'm like, I literally just showed up. That's why I was in Boston earlier this week, or last week
Mm.
rather, because I was at one of their interviews and I just prepped them. I just sat there, what I do on a normal basis, and they're eternally grateful. They both got their citizenship approved. And it's just knowing that my work matters is enough for me.
Yeah.
oh, I'm like
It's
getting
beautiful.
chills. Yeah.
Yeah, genuinely. I wonder if there might be people who hear your story, Xinia, too, and have some sort of interest in changing careers. Maybe this is something that's been in the back of their mind. They also want to they're being called to get involved in this. When you talked about compartmentalizing, I thought that was important because I would trust that there are people who want to get into this work, but also have concern or a fear around, could I even handle that? Like the emotions that come with it, and knowing that I can't help every person the way that I wish I could, or the outcome isn't always going to come out the way that I wish it would. Do you mind just sharing your advice for people who are thinking of it in that way, in terms of that compartmentalization or other ways that you navigate your way through that?
Yep. I will say being working in immigration, especially during the Trump administrations, is not for everybody. When I think about it, is I don't know if y'all remember Netflix came out with a show, Immigration Nation, a few years ago, and it was like it's highly recommend. The first episode was about the family separations that happened at the border during the first Trump administration. And those were literally my clients. Like at my first immigration job, my almost my entire caseload was families who had been separated under the zero tolerance policy. So it was something that I saw every day, literally every day. And the first episode was about that. And I'm just like watching it, like, you know, this is life. And I look over to my sister who's sitting next to me. She's bawling her eyes out watching this episode. And I'm just like super stoic, like, and so she's like, "How are you not crying?" I was like, I can't cry. Like, this is what I deal with every day. Like, I've heard this story at least 50 times, different ways, but like some version of the story at least 50 times. So I think it's not for emotional people like my sister, being that involved, being that deep in the trenches, does take a toll. It took a toll on me. I had to leave the nonprofit where I was because it was emotional. Like I let my boundaries down and it got too much. So I think being able to compartmentalize and that, and it's something that I'm still learning every day. Like I'm learning that I don't need to pick up my work phone every single day of the week. If a client gets picked up, there's somebody else that can also help with that. It's not just me anymore. And I think that's important to realize, like you said it earlier, Melissa, like I can't save every single person. One of my favorite sayings that I've learned to take to heart is that you can't pour from an empty glass. And I am aware of how valuable my glass is. And if I can't help myself, I can't help anybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that passion. I don't want to lose the love I have for my job. So I've slowly but surely recognized, I want to help every single person that I can, but I also know it's impossible. So I think kind of learning that boundary to set with myself, to recognize, like, as long as I've done everything I could, I can sleep at night, knowing that I did that. So I think that's an important piece of advice. Just fight like hell, but don't take it hard. Don't take it personally if the outcome isn't what you want it to be. Also, make sure that you have a good stress relief, way to relieve some stress. For me, it's running. I discovered running about 13 years ago now, and it has gotten me through so much in life. It's gotten me through deaths of my family. It's got me through law school. It's got me through the bar exams. I think just being able to find a way to relieve some of that stress. I know a lot of attorneys do yoga, meditation, sound healing, just whatever works for you.
And then what I was hearing from you is, as long as you can understand for yourself that you did everything that you could. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Xenia, your love for running, and you're doing the London Marathon. Is
I
that what
want
I
to.
saw?
I want to. So I'm turning 40, not next year, but the year after. And so I decided I ran the Miami Marathon 3 years ago now. London, it's another, like, one of the big world major marathons is in April, which is my birthday time. And I was like, that means that I can train in Miami in the winter, which is beautiful weather, but it's like that in the winter. So I'm like, I can do London for my 40th birthday. So that's the plan. I'm hoping either I get into the lottery or run a charity for it so that, 26.2 miles, here I come again.
That's a big deal. Love it. Okay, well, so we are actually going to be doing a cookbook associated with the podcast, and it's going to encompass every guest's recipes of things that you grew up with that come from your culture, your roots. So, what can you think of when it comes to your upbringing of a comfort meal or snack or drink that you would want to include?
Okay, so those are two different answers because my favorite comfort food growing up is my mom's tres leches, but it's a family secret recipe that I can't give out the recipe for.
Understand.
Yeah, my mom would like kill me. Um, like, not to brag, but we just had our work potluck and it was gone. I cut like a tiny piece for myself, and then like it was just. I told my sister, I was like, I'll try to, like, I'll save you a piece so you could have some, and I couldn't save her a piece. And then the casado is the gallo pinto, but with like a meat on the on the side, and that's for lunch. So like a piece of steak, chicken, etc. So I'll send you the recipe for a gallo pinto.
Okay.
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
take that.
Perfect. Okay. Should we close out with visits from our dogs?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you want to come say hi? Come here. Oh,
Luz.
you're so sleepy. Oh my God. He's literally like a doll.
I can't wait for you to meet him. He's so
Oh my
sleepy.
God.
They're so funny.
Oh,
He's
he's
like,
so sweet. He's like, get me out of here. What is going on? Oh,
oh
I
god,
love it.
Yay.
literally. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
I love that. That was so fun.
Well, it was really fun. Well, thank you, Xinia. This was
Oh,
really special.
thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all inviting me. It was a
Oh.
pleasure.